Welcome to the market recap presented by Tackle Trading. Get in the game.
Good afternoon, Tackle Traders, and hello, YouTube. This is Frank coming to you with another market recap. This time it is a Tuesday. It is the 26th of February. Another day just hanging around right below resistance as traders aren't quite ready to make up their mind, it would appear. And good afternoon to you as well, Patricia. Hello, everybody. I hope everybody had a great day both in and out of the market. Really fairly uneventful day, for the most part across the board in the market, as we're still seeing our major indexes just kind of hover right below those major resistance levels. We did see a little bit more selling in the Russell, as we will see as we get looking into it. But it looks like, at least for today, nobody was willing to make a call one way or the other. On the earnings front, we do have a handful of S&P 500 companies coming out tonight, including Public Storage, EOG Resources, and Mylan coming out today after the market closes. And then tomorrow, before the open, we've got a handful of interesting names, most notably, at least in my head, Lowe's. Definitely interested after Home Depot's kind of lackluster performance today on earnings. We've got Campbell Soup, who's kind of hanging out right at a major support level. So that one might be interesting. And of course, Best Buy. So certainly some interesting names reporting earnings here tomorrow. And none of the huge names, as for the most part, those big names are behind us for this round of earnings. Taking a look at the S&P 500, we saw a little gap down on the open, some nice resiliency early into trading day. Could have been easy to take profits, if you hadn't yesterday, after seeing that gap down, after seeing a little bit of selling yesterday. But we really held our own throughout much of the trading day. Once again, and we've seen this a lot lately, those last 15 minutes or so of the trading day, there was quite a bit of activity, as far as one way or the other. And of course, today, pretty good looking red candle on the 15-minute chart for our last candlestick of the day. I don't know if that means anything. It really hasn't meant much, I don't think, as of late. But I have found it interesting that it seems like a lot of people are getting out of trades at the end of the day as of late. So certainly a back and forth day, but really didn't go anywhere really at all. And of course, that kind of makes sense when we think in the broader side of things. I mean, we are still hanging out at that resistance level. Not really. I mean, you could make maybe a little bit of a case that there are some very short, 5, 10, maybe 15-minute time frame sell signals prompting us to think maybe there will be a pullback, but we're not really seeing a lot of those even just yet, I don't think. We're just hanging at a resistance. Are we going to pull back? Are we going to consolidate? Are we going to give up? Well, based off of today's activity, nobody knows, not just us. So, another day just kind of hanging around at that resistance level, until we see something develop. That's probably just going to be kind of the moral of the story, much like it was here yesterday from a broad perspective. And good afternoon to you as well, Tanner. Always great to have you here, and always great to have all you guys here with me. And those of you who catch it later in the trading day, I always appreciate you watching and hope you find it helpful to work through the markets with us here in the recap gang. Really same song and dance over in the NASDAQ. Not a whole lot to see here. This was our only index to technically close in the green today, up a whopping 0.11%, but it was our best performing index here today, but really looks almost exactly the same, right? Just below that 7,200 resistance level. We're starting to see that 9 creep up a little bit. That's going to be an interesting one. Of course, there's a big school of thought that when a fast-moving average crosses a slower, i.e. a 9 crosses a 200, that is a little bit of a signal. Now, I don't think personally that's going to be enough of a signal to by itself break through resistance here, but a little bit interesting to see that after kind of really taking last week off in the NASDAQ so far this week. Dow Jones, hey, well, let's make it a trifecta, right? Right back at that resistance here today, pushed down off of it, nice little doji candle. So as you can see, I mean, everybody is kind of waiting to see if we're breaking, consolidating, or pulling back. Some people might think a pullback's a bigger deal than others, but really that's what we're all kind of looking for. have not broke any even short-term moving averages, at least on a daily time frame. And so certainly right now, just another day, we're just going to have to wait and battle this one out, it looks like, at that resistance level. Now, over in the some more bearish activity, certainly, at least relatively speaking. Of course, we ran into that 1600 yesterday, gave it a little knock on the door, and gave up rather quickly. More downward movement here today on the Russell, closing down 0.7% on the day. So certainly our biggest losing index here today at that resistance level. But once again, intraday, yeah, will there be some sell signals when we see the last 2 days of candle on short-term time frames? Yeah, we topped out, we sold off, created that gravestone and kind of a full-bodied red candle today. So on the shorter-term time frames, we very well may be seeing some sell signals. On daily and longer-term time frames, much like the rest of the market, I don't think you can say the same thing. So we will have to come back tomorrow, see if we have any decided one way or the other. But again, today, just kind of much like yesterday, we're at resistance. What does that mean to you? What does that mean to me? And how do we want to go about approaching it, whether it's nothing, whether it's profit taking, whether it's hedging, whether it's converting long stock into covered calls, or long calls into debit spreads or calendar spreads, or looking for new bearish trades, whatever it is for us, individually, we're at that resistance level. At least in my mind, this is a place where we should be thinking about how we want to approach that. Still really like a breakout from a short-term perspective. If we're able to get it, we're just gonna have to fight this one out. It's not there, at least not yet. Over in materials, much like the market, I'm really actually kind of liking the development, personally, with the market consolidating. And like Matt said in the halftime report today, I too would love to see a pullback in the market. I think that would be probably the best opportunity, short-term speaking, that we could find. Not that the break wouldn't be, but I would love to have a pullback and then take a run at it. We'll see if we get it. And the material sector is really kind of mimicking that, right? We're right at that same level of resistance, that previous swing. In the case of the materials, we're still hanging around that 200 period moving average, haven't broke one way or the other. I'm still looking as our primary level of support going to be this recent level of resistance. If we do pull back, that would be an area I'd be keeping an eye out for. If we break, I will call that a bullish signal, but it may take a little bit of oomph from the market, at least some parts of the market, to get through there. But really not a lot has changed. We're continuing to battle at resistance over in the material sector as well. Over in energy, we were able to just kind of continue to do what we've done over the last several trading days. And hey, Zach, good to see you, my friend. I hope you're doing well. Just kind of hanging around, holding this breakout, not really getting a lot of movement off of that break of 65 that, of course, we saw not too terribly long ago. But most importantly, at least in my opinion, from a technical perspective, holding that break. If we can't go below 65, there's more room to the upside than the downside. Right? Not to say that we can't, but that's kind of what that pattern, at least to me, suggests, that now that we're above 65, or approximately, I should probably say we should stay above that. And every day that passes is just one more day that maybe somebody else out there can say, okay, now I'm sold. I'm sold. Maybe tomorrow. But as long as we're holding this breakout, I will continue to be looking at this through a bullish lens. Personally, as I kind of said before, I think our previous swing low, and really maybe sell signal would actually not occur until we broke down here at 62. It would be a sell signal in my mind, if we broke the 65 support zone. But I don't know that I would look at that as a tradable sell signal, but that is just me. That would be a break, or a failure of the breakout point if we were to break that. I wouldn't be buying it right there. I just probably wouldn't be selling it. I think, the really bearish signals, at least as we are sitting today, would probably not be until we broke 62 for me. Not that I'm expecting that every day that we're above 65. I'm going to consider it another day that I can overall be looking at this through a bullish lens. Over in financials, another back and forth day. They really, looked good yesterday early, ran into that 200, sold off of it, bounced back a little bit off of the gap down on the open today, but really not a whole lot to see here as we continue, much like the market. It's been a little choppy here maybe and it's been a little longer developing, more NASDAQ like than maybe, Dow Jones like, where we've seen, it's not been, a clean, flat line, I guess, at resistance. We've seen it kind of battling, but we've talked about this along the way. We had stuff at 26 and 26.50, and then of course the 200-day moving average, which I don't think is a huge deal, but it of course is there, at least as of today. We have seen some selling come off of it. Really not a lot here has changed from that perspective. I still overall do like this area. A break of the 200, I'm going to probably like it a little bit more, but as long as we hold support and are continuing to see our moving averages do the right thing, which what I mean by that is the rising 9 above the rising 20, I will continue to look favorably here. But much like the rest of the market, just battling at levels of resistance. Over in the industrial sector, another type of day. I don't know why all of a sudden, right before I jumped onto the recap, something weird happened with today's candle. It really didn't run all the way into $82 and change. I don't know what that's all about, but we just kind of hung around at that resistance level here today. Of course, we've been watching that 77 for a bit now, and no surprise that with the market struggling at resistance and the industrial sector challenging resistance, after one heck of a run to the upside, I don't think that's a huge surprise. Again, a pullback would be fantastic if we're able to get it, in my opinion. But again, this might be when it's been so strong, it consolidating and breaking above 77, going with the market wouldn't surprise me if in the slightest, if the market breaks, if the industrial sector can run with it without any real consolidation or pullback. That wouldn't surprise me with the overall strength that we have, of course, been seeing in the industrial sector. Tech actually one of our few areas to close in the positive here today. Nothing huge, it wasn't a huge day, right? You're seeing a lot of down 0.3s, up 0.2s today. Even when I was looking at the top gainers and losers, there were not very many. A few stocks, up or down 2 or 3%, a couple in the fours, but not a lot of movement across the board here today. So tech actually taking a little bit of a charge here today from a bullish perspective, at least, as we continue to work into that resistance level. But again, much like the NASDAQ, while it's a little bit further away than maybe the S&P and the Dow Jones are, it's hovering right above us at the same time. So I think we can kind of read this, and really anything that's kind of closing in on resistance as it's going to be working with the market, at least from a broad perspective. So good solid day. We are approaching that resistance level. Definitely seeing some interesting movers. Microsoft, Cisco continues to run crazy after its gap on its break, especially for them. They're not a particularly wild, volatile stock. They've had a very good run after their earnings, no doubt. Over in the staples, just another kind of day in the office, with staples. It still seems very undecided. For me, really not a whole lot has changed here. I think you really are looking at this from a breakout perspective as an interesting bullish signal. But for me, it has to be that before I'm all that interested. Now, hey, if we get a deeper pullback into 53 or 53.50, maybe I'll change my mind. But where it is right now, I think, just like I said yesterday, for me, it's a very mixed area. I've not felt great about it for quite some time. I don't hate it, but I definitely don't love it. I think that's my bias is probably shown over the weeks on this, no doubt about that. Continuing to use that same level of resistance. Of course, this was an old support zone, an old breakout zone. A break beyond it, like we've talked before, could be an interesting opportunity for us within this sector. But for me, I've got to see it before I'm even really willing to think all that much about it. We also have, Campbell's coming out with earnings. You had Kraft Heinz here last week, have that, bad, maybe is an understatement, earnings report continuing to hit new lows day after day as of right now. So it just continues to be, kind of an area. Coke, we know what happened with its earnings. It's just not been very appealing from at least a technical perspective this last little while as it continues to battle at that level of resistance. Over in utilities, an interesting day in utilities. Of course, we saw pretty good profit taking yesterday after testing 57 last week. And I think that made a lot of sense. And we saw what we see so very often in these things that are very, very strong. It continued to sell, and then it worked into a reason to buy, in this particular case, that 9 exponential moving average, at least in my mind. And people just jumped right back into it, looking for that excuse to buy. You see that so often when something's showing a ton of strength or weakness. It doesn't take much. It might take a lot to sell me, but I'm just me. And so, I don't matter from the perspective of the market. So nice little intraday run off of that low, no doubt about it. 57 continues to be a big deal in my mind. And at least when we're this close to it, a break is kind of the signal that I'm going to need to see. A little bit of a deeper pullback, I could be very interested, no doubt about it. Will we get it? I don't know. It's hard to bet against strong momentum, right? We've seen this in a lot of areas, and there's a reason they say don't trade against the trend. And I adhere to that completely. So continue to watch how we react at 57. If this is an area that you're interested in, there's nothing wrong with kind of scouting ahead for potential pullbacks in the sector or potential breakouts. If that's if we want to just kind of consolidate and then break later in the week or next week, probably have some time to think about how you may want to play this sector. If in fact you do, should be fun to watch. I used to not like utilities, but they're a lot more interesting these days. Over in healthcare, very much like the overall market, just not able to really get anything going one way or the other, starting to develop a little bit of back and forth type of a nature. I guess it really is going to come down to probably you right now. I think we can at least say our short-term level of support is going to be this low that we put in last week. Whether or not you're going to call that a pivot is probably going to depend on how you interpret it. We know that this was a pivot point down here. We did see some upward movement off of that low in the form of Friday's and then yesterday's gap to the upside. I think that can be a level of short-term support that I'm going to be looking at least as of right now. Nothing really has changed in my mind overall, at least within this sector. We'll have to see, of course, big pharma talking over, this week. So maybe something can happen over there. But technically speaking, I don't really think anything has changed, at least not in my opinion. As long as we continue to hold support, we're continuing to make higher highs and higher lows. We do have some overhead in that 93, 93.50 zone, which is kind of looming right above us, right? Got a little room between here and there, but it's not that far. We've seen how fast, these things can fill up this empty space. But beyond that, there is still a lot of upside. Maybe it's going to be, develop into one of these, go sideways for a little bit and break that 93.50 for the signal. I don't think you have to say that just yet, but if we stay within this range too much longer, that's probably how I'll be looking at it. But overall, I still continue to be overall bullish within this sector. Would have liked to see it perform a little bit better, but again, with the market at resistance, it's not like I'm running down everything to buy, certainly, so I can understand why other investors aren't doing the same. Discretionary pushed down fairly nicely off of that 112-ish level of resistance yesterday. Caught a little bit of a footing here today, closing in the green, kind of matching the overall market, though not really a whole lot to see here. A deeper pullback could potentially be interested. Of course, we see lows. We see the TJ Maxx company coming out with earnings tomorrow. So there are some earnings here that might play one way or the other. Without a deeper pullback, I think you're looking at the break of 112, which I personally would look at as a very interesting bullish signal. I wouldn't mind seeing it consolidate and then break, but we will have to wait and see. 112, though, continues to be our primary level of resistance. I think at this point in time, really our swing low is still way the heck down here in the 106s. We've got moving averages. We've got old levels of intraday that we can look at short term, but from a trend perspective, at least in my opinion, our swing support is way down here. So even a little bit of a deeper pullback wouldn't keep me from being interested, broadly speaking, in that sector. Over in real estate, a little more selling today, but not really doing much as we continue just to do this little weird consolidation dance that we have been doing now for over a week. Trying to break, but very exhausted. I mean, when you have what's probably the most V-shaped recovery of the V-shaped recoveries, in my opinion, that we've seen, it takes you can't be surprised when it runs out of steam. The thing to take out of it, though, is where's the profit taking? I mean, we relative to what we've seen, this is the first 2 days of red candles that we've seen really for a while, right? But is that I don't know. I'm not really seeing a ton of profit taking necessarily in this department, but maybe we are going to be developing a little bit of a pullback. One more day, and I guess I'd probably have to say that one more day of selling. So we'll have to see where that one is. Did close below the 9 today. Not you guys know how I look at that. Not anything major, but certainly it's a less of a bullish signal, right? We didn't see the real estate sector close below the 9 for a very long time. Basically, once we broke that 9 EMA, we stuck our nose below it a couple of times, but it's just here recently closing right there yesterday, and now finally for the first time closing below that. It's not a great bullish signal. I don't think it's independently a tradable bearish signal by any stretch of the imagination, but I do think it is worth noting that maybe we are going to be able to see a little more of a pullback. Now, with that said, real estate's been so hot lately. If it's at new highs tomorrow, that wouldn't terribly surprise me either. But I do think for the first time, maybe we can think maybe we actually are going to get a pullback over here. And lastly, over in communication services, again, it's really just kind of stuck, a little bit of a mixed bag. We're seeing Google and Facebook having a hard time really get going one way or the other. You're seeing some back and forth in the gaming stocks. Netflix is just having one heck of a time cleanly breaking out of 360. So it continues to be a very back and forth type of a sector. Like I said yesterday, for me, at least broadly speaking, the signal is going to be whichever happens first, the break above 47 or the break below 45 here. Really independently, sure, would I take trades, if the charts were set up the right way within the sector, I would have no objection to that personally. But broadly speaking, it's developing into kind of that classic K trade. The longer we kind of hang in this range, the more I'm probably going to like it as a, that K trade type of candidate, where sooner or later, it's either going to break 45, which is a sell signal, whether you trade it or not, that's a different story, or break above 47, which would be a buy signal. Same thing, may or may not trade it, but it would be a signal. So we are very sideways, having a hard time generating any real momentum over here. Although EA did have an interesting, pullback type of development. I'm still very leery of the gaming companies. I expect more volatility personally, but my opinion is my own. I certainly can understand why people have been looking at that from a pullback perspective over on EA. So, not really a lot to see here. Just another day of hanging around resistance. Everybody's kind of waiting for somebody to make the first move, it seems like. Exactly, Zach. I mean, that is basically, I want you to make the first move, whether it's breaking through resistance or taking profits and generating some shorter term sell signals to get me to really believe there's going to be a pullback. Problem is, you're waiting for me, who's waiting for Linda, who's waiting for Tanner. And so, it's basically where we are right now. So it's a little bit of a waiting game, I think, right now, which is okay. It really is, because at the end of the day, we might be having this conversation a week from now where it's just turned into a long consolidation period after a strong bullish move. And that really wouldn't be all that shocking if that were to happen, right? Not to say I know that it's going to. I would tell you if I did, but wouldn't be all that surprising if that were the way it was going to play out. We were very extended. A lot of these stocks were at highs, and of course, it wasn't that long ago where, sellers were in firm control of the market. So a little bit of a pause, whether it's consolidation or pullback, I think is probably healthy for our next potential wave of swing trades to the upside. Just gets tougher and tougher the more extended we go. All that's left are breakouts, and I love me some breakouts. But even then, they're breakouts of breakouts. So a little bit of consolidation or a pullback, I think, would be healthy for the market. And at least, for a couple of days, I've got reason to believe that maybe we're going to get it. Over in VIX, a little bit of a spike up today with a little gap down on the open. Nothing really substantial or major by any means. Traders just continue to feel like, things make sense. It makes sense that we're hanging around and struggling to break these resistance levels. That doesn't scare me that it's not pushing right through these major levels of resistance. Over in the dollar, we did take out those moving averages yesterday when we talked, kind of been putting together that little floor over the last, almost trading week that gave out. And basically, the rest of the story build up to our next level at that 96 marker. And that's what happens a lot, right? When you finally break some support or resistance, it's very easy for it to make a little bit of a move that way, right? And certainly can happen quite regularly over in the dollar. A little bit more on the bearish side as far as no bulls are in control. Yesterday, there was maybe an argument for the pullback. I don't really feel like you could say that today. Of course, I haven't changed my stance on the dollar at all. I still continue to believe that it is in a longer-term sideways range, and I'm still waiting for the eventual day, which will, of course, happen one of these days. Probably shouldn't expect it to happen anytime soon, but eventually we will come out of this range. And so I will continue to treat it as such. From a momentum point of view, I do think you can say in the shorter term, the bears have a little bit of control. Keep an eye on this 96. We saw, when that's given out before, there's some room to go. The next wave down, though, we're going to have these old lows, right? We saw some play off of these lows lining up with that 200 period moving average. So if that can't, that might be an interesting, place if and when we get there. We'll have to wait and see. But I continue and will continue to say the same thing over and over and over until you're tired of me saying it. And then I'll probably keep saying it because you're probably already tired of me saying it. I still think the best way, in my mind, to be looking at the dollar overall is neutral right now within this longer term sideways range. Over in gold, just trying to continue to talk people into buying off of this floor. Gold doesn't have to do much to talk buyers into it these days, and I certainly understand why. I don't think we've had kind of that, yes, this is the bottom, but now we are seeing, that, after a big day of selling, stopped right on the old resistance, started to see some movement, started to try to create more upward movement off of that yesterday without, before kind of giving up for the day. And here another day just kind of sitting right on top of that. So the trend continues to remain intact. I don't think this is kind of the textbook pullback yet, if that's what you were looking for. But again, it's gold and it's certainly very, very strong. And I would not want to be on the bearish side of it right now under any circumstances. So we are working into those averages. As Cody often says, a lot of times you'll see it pop and then hang out. And that's kind of what it's doing right now. Popping, taking a little bit of profits off of it, just kind of hanging around, at least for the time being. I still can't imagine a, bearish argument from a technical point of view or really fundamental point of view. Since we really focus on the charting here, I can't really see a bearish argument for it whatsoever right now. And I don't think, I think most traders would probably agree with that. Over in silver, much like gold, we're hanging around. We're seeing some back and forth off of the nice pop and then big drop, one day of profit taking. Just another day kind of hanging around. Unlike gold, as I've said, you guys are probably tired of me saying it, which, I could understand completely of the pullback argument for gold. Even today, just probably wouldn't hit my personal rules, but that doesn't mean it wouldn't hit somebody else's. I think over on silver, practically speaking, the break above resistance is a much better signal. And I am always willing to wait for what I think is the better signal. And I think on silver, and I do think that there's a very good chance that we will ultimately get that. I can wait. I can wait for that signal. We've seen that floor. We've seen it, test on the intraday on 2 separate occasions. So we continue just to kind of hang around, just like gold over the course of this week, still showing that upward momentum, higher highs, or higher lows. But at least as this last test, we weren't able to put in that higher high, which is one of the reasons. Of course, this is the main reason, this old floor. But one of the reasons I think the break, is more appealing right now on silver than the pullback. And again, that's just me, and I wouldn't bet against it, is that we have failed at resistance, at least in the short term. We worked up and we stopped, right? We were on a good little run and we ran into resistance and boom, it was over. And we saw selling immediately after that. So a little bit of a concern when you're kind of, I understand I'm a little bit nitpicky here, and that's okay. I think you can be, and I think you should be, really in the market. Our friends over in natural gas, almost being well behaved, they did work into that old level of support early in the trading day. Just going to an hourly time frame just to kind of see how this all played out here. Of course, here was our gap on the open. We looked at this yesterday, where when they finally came out of that little range, very nice price appreciation, working right up into that old floor, and kind of that's where it ended, at least for the day. makes a lot of sense. There wasn't a lot of space, and that's kind of what we talked about as we watched this develop. We could break this. There wasn't a lot of space. There just wasn't a lot of time either. It just happened very, very quickly. Beyond that, I would call that another bullish signal if and when we break. If we do pull back, I could see the argument for buying, or at least being open to looking for a pullback opportunity. I think we still have to be careful because these are the early stages of coming out of a lengthy downward move. But again, just like yesterday, we've held support, we broke resistance, we closed above our 9, we closed above our 20. Our 9 has stopped going down, stopped being flat, and started going up, crossing over that 20. So a little more upward movement today into resistance. So we are, at least in my opinion, seeing a momentum shift going on right now in the natural gas market. It's just got lots of challenges, and any one of them can beat it, right? Because we remember this. This has been a fun 2 days for anybody trading natural gas. I have no doubt about that. But we remember these downward moves, right? We haven't changed our trend just yet. We're just showing signs of potential reversal, and that's not for everybody. Somebody needs to be the aggressive trader that comes in on the first signs of reversals, for the more conservative approach to get an opportunity a little bit down the road, right? So keep an eye on this, this old low as a potential resistance level, the old breakout point as our primary level of support. And I think those are probably the two short-term areas we should be looking at. We are able to break through this. Probably not a stretch to think we will be challenging the $3 mark, in my opinion, at least. If we can take out that resistance, $3, pretty round number, lining up, pretty close to our 50-period moving average there as well. And lastly, over in crude, a little bit of a bounce back day after some pretty respectable selling here yesterday. Of course, we talked about it yesterday. There really wasn't any change of trend. It was just it gave up a resistance. The why, we could talk about the why, but it did is what I'm always most interested in. I saw a nice little bounce back candle here today. I could see the argument. We are continuing to make higher highs and higher lows. I can absolutely see the argument if we are to continue this upward momentum going into the next candle. I could see the argument for buying into the pullback. I really wouldn't have any objection to that. Obviously, that hasn't happened yet, and it may very well not happen. But I could understand that if that is your type of trading, if you are more of a pullback trader, would like to see it maybe have a couple more small candlesticks before showing that upward movement. But again, never hurts to ask, just can't expect, right? But a nice bounce back day here today, right in our moving averages. Again, as I've said before, for me, as long as we're above this old swing here, I think you have to be at least not bearish, at least not right now. Now, if we see a run up tomorrow into Thursday, back into resistance, sell off next week and take out this low, much different conversation, but that's a lot of ifs, right? If that's the way it wants to go, we'll follow it along together and see where it takes us. So nice little bounce back day at those moving averages, kind of hanging on top of that old level of resistance here as well. So ladies and gentlemen, that is where we find ourselves after a fairly uneventful day. I mean, it really was not that much, not a whole lot to see here. Makes a lot of sense. This is an important area. I don't know who's going to ultimately win, but it makes sense that the traders and investors are going to battle it out. And we're going to have to wait for at least one more day for signs that one side or the other is kind of taking the bull by the horns or the bear by the horns, I guess, if that's the way it wants to go. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do the market recap for the day. But as always, it is my pleasure, and I certainly appreciate everybody's time. It's always great to have you guys with me here. Always more fun to do this with friends. If you are new around here, be sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell. And join us over at Tackle Trading on Twitter as well. You can also find me on Twitter at FrankMartin23 if you're ever looking for me. That is where you can find me personally. Don't forget, we are having our swing trading webinar here tomorrow night. So we'll see all our pro members over there, but that's for everybody. So pro member or not, come on over, join us and check that out. Should be a whole lot of fun to do so. We'll talk a little bit about that here tomorrow as well. So, hey guys, it's always my pleasure. Thanks a lot, Zach. Thank you, everybody. If you enjoyed the market recap, it's always helpful and appreciated if you give it a like, a share, just to help get the message out, let YouTube know that we are on the right track over here. So thank you in advance for that. With that, ladies and gentlemen, get the heck out of here. Have a fantastic Tuesday afternoon. Pro members, enjoy the coaches show here this evening. And I will see you all same time, same place here tomorrow afternoon. So absolutely, Zach, have fun. Should be interesting. Should be interesting. All right, guys, have a wonderful afternoon and see you tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.